Cards from the Limit Break era are back with new skills and a crest, helping them compete with today's decks. The new premium deck sets are great entry products for the premium format, offering a lot of value even if you just want to try these decks out. They include important staples like Harmonix Messiah and Elementaria Sanctitude, along with key pieces for the respective decks. In addition, they give you some markers and a deck box. While the pre-constructed decks are already good out of the box, I'll be suggesting some cards to further optimize your deck. There are cards that you definitely want to add, but keep in mind that premium has a lot of room for creativity in deck building. As you play more, you can find what works for you. After I show you the suggestions for your decks, I'll be providing sample deck lists you can start with. Jewel Knights have two variants, Pure and Altmile Hybrid. This guide will focus on the Pure build, which specializes at searching out units from the deck and calling on top of units. The deck set provides most of the core pieces for the main deck, including all the essential V-Series cards and even rare staples like Sword Me, which was a PR last printed in 2015. The G-Zone has all the important strides. Having 4 Evangeline is ideal since you're going to be flipping 2 of those in your first turn. Crystal Luster is insane and I'm glad they give you at least one. Eulogias and Twin Sword are helpful strides as well. Going to the main deck, you'll want to add 2 more Ashleys. Ashley is an attack extender, which allows you to call a Jewel Knight at the end of the battle. It's also a decent secondary ride. Then 1 or 2 more copies of V Salome. It has a powerful Vanguard skill, which you can also use with Crystal Luster Dragon. For a CB at the end of the battle, you can call any number of Jewel Knights from your hand, and if you call 3 or more, and your opponent is grade 3, you can stand your Vanguard. Then you can consider adding 1 more Christine as it can help. It searches a grade 3 Jewel Knight from your deck and calls it even if you're grade 2. And then the called unit goes to hand at the end of the turn. So you can search for ride targets like Salome. For the next card, you have a choice between Alwyn and Morvidus. Morvidus is already part of the deck set. Alwyn and Morvidus have similar uses and has each of their own pros and cons. Alwyn needs to be rested and gives 5k only to Vanguard, while Morvidus requires a CB and can give the power to any unit. For their second skill, Alwyn lets you choose from the top 2 cards of your deck, but they must be a Jewel Knight, meaning there's a chance you get nothing, while Morvidus guarantees a draw, so this can be preference. Next is Banding Jewel Knight Miranda. Miranda copies your Vanguard's power, making her a formidable attacker. She also lets you countercharge if you don't have any open CB. Then for the critical triggers, you have 2 options. Straight Jewel Knight Bartram, who returns to deck and lets you draw a card while having Jewel Knight in its card name. And the other option is Bringer of Dreams Belenus, the defensive crit that lets you draw when it goes to damage. For the G-Zone, you'd want to have 2 or 3 more copies of Crystal Luster Dragon, since it is your primary stride besides Evangeline. Your V grade 3 Jewel Knights like Salome and Ashley have powerful Vanguard skills, and Crystal Luster allows you to utilize them while having triple drive and a GB3 guard restrict that forces your opponents to guard with 3 or more cards from their hand for the turn. This card was very expensive, but it's been reprinted as a participation promo for Bushiroad Springfest this year, making it more accessible. Then we'll go straight to the G-Guards. Faithful Sacred Staff Morgos. Morgos is your best G-Guard since Royal Paladins lack strong options compared to other clans. Including 1 or 2 more copies would help a lot. And for your other G-Guard, Dark Element Dismal. While you don't have many options for G-Guards, Dismal brings a lot of value to this deck since it protects one of your units from being hit and chosen by abilities. Luckily, this card has also been reprinted as a BSF participation promo alongside Crystal Luster, so this will be easier to find as well. Now let's move on to the deck list. You can see here, I chose to run only 1 V Salome because I don't want to further decrease my chances of riding the original one on the first turn or on the first grade 3 turn. And I reduced the copies of Ashley reverse to 1. And if ever V Salome goes to damage, you still have Ashley reverse and regular Ashley. I removed the Legion grade 3 because I think there's no reason for that card to be in this deck. Added only 2 Miranda because her cost needs CB, and I think the other Jewel Knights bring a lot of value compared to this, but she's a great attacker. Same with Stormy, only 2, because if you ever need them again, you can just recycle them, since most of your cards is able to put back Jewel Knights from drop to the bottom of your deck, or actually normal units back to your deck. And Sibyl, a great ride. If you place on top of it, you can check top 3 and call up to 1 grade 2 or less Jewel Knight from among them. So really good. And on attack, you can put one grade 2 or less card from your hand into Soul, and you can draw 1. This card gives great value. Then Lele, just a free 15k attacker and Soul Charge, and if you place on top of it, it gets plus 10,000. And Stormy, only 2, I think 2 is enough. Then you can see here, I opt to use Alwyn over Morvidus. I just prefer the resting of it instead of the CB cost for the first skill, and also the check top 2 is really good since all of your normal units are Jewel Knights, and even these critical triggers. So the only time you whiff is if you only have 12 of these triggers or the Elementary Sanctitude. I added one more Christine to be more consistent. I think this is a great card. You can search your right targets and even call Ashley if you need her. And also, you can also search your one of grade 3s. Then for the crits, if you're gonna add another crit, you remove the soul crit, because most of the decks in premium wants to keep the stride crits to decrease your chances of not being able to stride. And I chose Bartram over the defensive crit just for the name, and you can put it back to deck at the end of your turn and you can draw 1. Then for the G zone, obviously Harmonics. I still use the 4 Evangeline because you're gonna be flipping 2. You're gonna be flipping 2 on your first turn, and sometimes you want to stride the last remaining one. I kept the 1 Masgal just in case it's still a 25,000 shield. 2 Eulogias, 3 more goes because I think this is your best G-Guard. Then 3 Crystal Luster. I think 3 Crystal Luster is enough since you're gonna stride into this first. And 1 Twin Sword and 1 Dismal. I removed the Altma Stride since Evangeline is free now, so you don't have to worry if you don't have any CB. And yeah, that is my Jewel Knights deck list. Similar to Jewel Knights, Raging Form is also an aggressive deck. Its specialty lies in retiring rear guards to enable multiple vanguard attacks in a single turn. The pre-constructed deck includes most of the core pieces you need, along with hard-to-find staples like Darkless Angel and Mana. For the G-Zone, all the strides you are given are going to be well used, except for the GB8, since your games may not last that long, and you would prefer to use the other strides. 4 Raging Wrap is ideal, with 1 Drag Ruler so you can flip it with Raging Wrap. They also give you Chain Rancor, which is a staple stride in Shadow Paladin. For the main deck, aim for a playset of Raging Fall Dragon. You'll need 2 more copies. It's an Abyss Dragon which can come up if you have to use Raging Wrap's original skill. Additionally, it's a great secondary ride and works really well with Chain Rancor Dragon, which has a similar effect with Crystal Luster. Including 1 or 2 copies of V Raging Form Dragon will strengthen your combos. It synergizes with the original Raging Form. You can ride it with the original Raging Form skill and continue your combo. Adding 1 more mana would be great, since it's one of your best grade 2s. Calling it grants you a free +1 by searching your deck for a grade 1 or less Revenger and calling it to rear guard. More allows you to search for a unit with the same name as your Vanguard, which will be Raging Form. It can be handy since it is a guaranteed search. Darkbound Trumpeter helps extend your attacks by calling a Revenger trigger for the cost of Raging Form. It can be searched and called by Darkless Angel and Mana in the battle phase. For the next one, Blaster Dark Revenger Abyss. This is a tech card you can add if you find yourself needing to retire. Adding this card is highly dependent on the meta or the decks you mostly fight against. For critical triggers, you have two options again. First is Grim Revenger, a vanilla V trigger solely for the Revenger in its card name. This actually comes up and is helpful. And your other option is the defensive critical trigger Taboo Mage Kafar, who lets you draw if it goes to damage. For the OT, considering your deck's focus on aggressive Vanguard attacks, Valnote might be a better choice than a Martinova. Valnote lets a standing rearguard attack twice, and if you give the power to that rearguard, that's two 100 million power attacks. You can also choose not to give the ability to a rearguard and instead call another unit from hand, which helps with the cost of Raging Form. You can also choose Idus Pharaoh just for the crit, but being able to get a card from drop is great as well. For the G-Zone, Chain Rancor Dragon, this is your main stride besides Raging Wrath. Its skill is similar to Crystal Luster, allowing it to inherit the abilities of your heart card. It also has the GB3 guard restrict where your opponent has to guard with 3 or more cards from hand. However, the condition is you must have 3 or more grade 1 units on the field. This means there are a lot of turns where you're not able to utilize the guard restrict for all of your attacks. And there are also turns where you want to ride on top of Chain Rancor to continue your combo. But it's alright because your turns are still really powerful. Second, you can consider running Phantom Blaster Diablo if you have some space in your G-Zone. You need at least 2 copies in your G-Zone since its skill requires you to flip the same name as it. Basically, it gets a crit, and when your opponent does not have 2 rearguards to retire, your opponent cannot guard from hand for the battle it attacks. For the G-Guards, Dark Dragon Deep Griever Dragon, adding 1 more can help since it's one of your best G-Guards. You can also add some Plot Maker Dragons. It has a basic skill with no cost. The condition is also very easy to meet. You just need 3 grade 1s in your drop and it's a 25k shield. Here is my Revenger list. For Raging Fall, because I think it's important to have as a set. Only 1 Raging Form V, because I don't want to miss my chances on riding the original version on the first grade 3 turn. 2 Slay Hex to increase my chances of riding Raging Form. And you also get it back to hand, so you can use it to discard for Stride. Because the Stride crits doesn't work for the superior strides. So I removed the V-Drag rulers because I don't think there's any reason for it to be here. It doesn't help with your game plan. Only 2 Tar 2 because I think Dark Bless and Mana are more helpful as grade 2s. And there's not enough space because I want a set of Dark Bless and Mana. So you'll need to find 1 more Mana if you're gonna run a set, since the deck set only includes 3. For Rakya, this is a great ride. When you ride your grade 3 unit with Revenger in its card name on Vanguard from grade 2, you can search your deck for 1 grade 1 Revenger and call it to rear. And the second skill also comes up sometimes when you really need units. Renal is a great booster and attacker. So on attack or boost, it gives you on hit. You can check top 3 and add 1 Revenger from among them to your hand. So great searcher and gives on hit pressure to your attacks. Only 2 IF because there's not much space. But when you rest this, you can check top 5 for a Raging Form Dragon from among them and add it to your hand for free. And 1 more, it's a guaranteed search. You CB1 and you can search your deck for the same card name as your Vanguard with Revenger in its card name. And you add it to your hand. And only 1 Darkman Trumpeter because I think it's enough. If it goes to damage, it's fine. And you can also search it. So on place, when this unit is placed on VR rearguard, if you pay the cost, you can search your deck for 1 grade 0 or less with Revenger in its card name and call it to rear. So you will be calling this. It's just helps with extending your attacks for the cost of Raging Form. Then here I chose to run Walnut because I really like the 2 100 million attacks, and also If you can choose, you can also call a card from your hand, and you also get to draw. So the call helps you also with the cost of raging forms. Then I chose to run the V trigger just because of the Revenger in its card name. And yeah, in most premium decks, you don't want to remove the stride crits to not risk missing your stride. For the G zone, for Raging Wrap, because this is your main stride together with Chain Rancor. And Drug Ruler is here just to flip it because it will actually matter. So you flip this so you can still have a bunch of Raging Wraps in your G zone. Then Chain Rancor, I think 3 is enough. Only one more Fez as well. I think it's also enough. It gives crit pressure to your front row units, and when your opponents would call from hand to Guardian Circle, they must call 2 or more at the same time. Then one Crow Croak. So retire 2 rear guards, and your opponent chooses 3 of their rear guards and retires them. And if they can't retire, at the end of the battle, this unit attacks CB1, retire 2, and you can stand it, and it gains plus 10. I chose not to run a Phantom Blast to the Diablo because I think there's a lot of counters to the attack, and it requires 2 slots in your G zone. It only lets your opponent not guard the Vanguard attack from hand. So that stride, if your opponent does not have 2 rear guards to retire, your opponent won't be able to guard the Vanguard attack with cards from their hand. But they can still G-Guard and Elementaria Sank, and also use Blitz orders like Elementaria. So that's why I didn't run it. 2 Plotmaker Dragon, because it's just decent. It's always at 25,000 shield. 2 Deep Griever Dragon, because I think this is a great G-Guard, and it can also be a PG if you return 5 grade 1s back to your deck. Then 1 Gelido, just in case, because you never know. And that is my deck list for Revengers. Musketeers specialize in generating plant tokens, calling units from your deck, and rewriting Cecilias to extend your attacks. Honestly, I think this has the least value out of the 3 deck sets. For the main deck, they only give you 2 reverse, even though your deck revolves around this card. They give you the important grade 2 Musketeers, and for the grade 1s, you only want Ruth. They don't give you the old and good cards like in the Revengers and Jewel Knights deck set. For the G zone, Katrina is a staple stride for Neon Nectar, so it is great they give you one. Ladislava is helpful as well. The new stride and crest is also good if you're going first, since previously, Musketeers preferred going second to stride first. And if they go second, they grade 2 game to stride first before. For the main deck, you definitely want 2 more copies of Cecilia Reverse, as this card is crucial since your entire strategy revolves around this card. You'd also want Usurp Dragon. It is another essential piece. It self-revives whenever you ride or stride. So when you rewrite Cecilia Reverse, you get an extra attack, and then you can retire it for Cecilia's ability. Favila is also an important piece as it protects your combo plays from disruption by granting herself and another Musketeer resist, preventing your opponent from retiring them on your turn. Ursula's first skill allows you to change the position of your rear guards horizontally, but her second skill is the primary purpose she is in the deck. The unit on her front cannot be chosen by card effects, so it also protects from disruption. Her ability also works on the Vanguard, so she counters decks like Shirayuki who targets your Vanguard. You should also consider running 1 or 2 copies of Augusto. It gains plus 5,000 power and shield, and upon retiring 2 units, allows you to return 2 Musketeers from your drop zone to your deck, lets you draw, and when you call plant token generators, you can retire those cards and then activate the plant token generator skill afterwards. Susana is a great countercharger for Soul Blast 2, she lets you countercharge 2. And then for the next card, you can choose between the 2 or have both. Maiden of Sweetberry, who is a 13k and soul charges, while Maiden of Flower Carpet you can add back to hand by retiring rear guards at the end of your turn. Another card you can also put is Artemisia Musketeer Kiara. You can consider running her. She is a sentinel that lets you put back any card from your drop back to the deck. Any unit, so you can put back triggers. For critical triggers, you have two options again, Gardenia Musketeer Elaine. Although it only gives plus 5000 power and has only 10,000 shield, Elaine has Musketeer in its card name, and if you call it with the effect of a Musketeer, you can countercharge too. The second option is Flower Garden Maiden Milis, who lets you draw when it goes to damage. For the G-Zone Untainted Holy Damsel Green Katrina, this is your main stride. It costs a bunch of plant tokens and give them plus 10,000. In addition, when it attacks, you can search your deck for any card up to the same number of plant tokens you have and call those cards. It sets up your combo perfectly since you can search for anything. Storm Element Cyclone, this card primarily functions to be flipped in your G-Zone. When face up, it grants your plant tokens plus 5000 power. You can also consider Megaloma. This can be your least priority since it may be hard to find, but it can be a game saver in some situations. It gives you a second life, offering a second chance to win the game. So in some situations, this card will really help. Flower Princess of Dedication Robertina. Adding more copies of Robertina is recommended. This powerful G-Guard recycles units back to your deck, countercharges, and has 30,000 shield. Here is my Cecilia deck list. 4 of the Cecilia reverse. I think this is essential. Your deck revolves around this card. 2 Usurp Dragon. You can also play 3 if you find space. 4 of the OG. Only 1 Agosto because again there's no space in this deck. It's very hard. You only have a few grade 1s because a lot of your good Musketeer cards are grade 2. So I wanted to run Agosto at 2, but there's just no space. For Sylvia, for Sol, and like you can run like 2 offs, but it's good to run 4 offs just because for Robertina you have to choose 2 cards with the same name, and for some of your other few skills. Sol is a great card. So Blast Retire, check top 3, call 1 unit from among them, and if it's a trigger CB1 you can activate the trigger effect. Sylvia is a plant token generator. Torres, CB1 retire rear guard. You can also retire herself. Same with Sol. Check top 3, you can call 2 cards with Musketeer in their card names, or 1 card that does not have Musketeer from among them. So this is great also to extend your attacks, and it's also a good value. You can call 2. For Villa, I think is important as well. It gives resist to itself and to one of your Musketeer rear guards. So without this, your turn can easily be ended with disruption plays. Like when you're against Kagero, they can retire your units with their G guard. Urjula, you know, another protection, another unit that gives resist. I chose Sweetberry over Flower Carpet just for the 13k, and I guess you can soul charge as well, but Flower Carpet is also good. And for, as you notice as well, I removed the 2 grade 3s that are not Cecilia from the deck set. I think it's there's just no space for them, and the other cards are way more useful than those 2. And I only kept Ruth as a 3-off because this one you can generate plant token even on rear. Ruth only on Vanguard, but Ruth is also a good counter charger. Susana is also great, so that's 2 for counter charge 2, and 1 off is fine. You can search it with Katrina. Urjula also you can search with Katrina, and yeah, Ruth retires itself. This one stays on board. Then I chose to run 4 Elaine just because of the 2 counter charge 2, and you can call this in the battle phase as well. So if you need CB to extend your attacks, you see Elaine, that's really good. But yeah, the only issue is It's an old trigger, so only 5k power and 10k shield. And I didn't run Kiara because of elementary sanctitude, but it's also a good idea. I guess depends on what you're fighting against, or what's the meta look like. Yeah, having Kiara is good as well, since it also increases your grade 1s. See, this deck only has 9 grade 1s, so that's really low. I should probably add more grade 1s, but I'm still not sure what to remove. Bless Favor is a good OT. And yeah, what I said in the other deck sets as well, you want to keep the stride crits, or most premium decks wants to keep the stride crits to decrease the chances of you not being able to stride. Tula this lava just in case you're fighting against Mega Colony. Only 3 of the Cecilia stride, since for me it's only, if you ever do stride her, you only stride her once. Most of the time you want to go Katrina. Sometimes if you go second, sometimes it's better to just go straight to Katrina. Tura Bratina, this is one of your best G guards. Antero 35,000 shield for Soul Blast, but just keep in mind of the condition. And this one, Costarina, just in case, you never know what happens, since this is also part of the deck set, so you don't have to change much. And also Rain Breath, you can call a card from your hand to rear guard, and give it resist, and this becomes a 20k shield. So you can call Sol, and if you see a trigger there, you can activate the trigger and give power to your vanguard. Megaloma, this card has saved me a lot of times, or there's like few situations that this card will win you the game. So if you can find one, yeah, it's a good idea to pick it up if you can. And that's my Musketeer deck list. Yeah, I'm glad these deck sets are really accessible, and hopefully it increases the players in premium. I really like all the products, since they also give upgrades to older decks, and they also give you some staples. So that's all for this video. Thank you for watching.